Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the sweltering sands of ancient Egypt, where the sun doesn't just shine, it scorches, baking the Nile's banks like a clay pot in a kiln. Picture yourself standing on a dusty terrace, the air so thick with heat it feels like you're breathing through a wool blanket. The Nile glitters below, but there's no breeze, no relief, just the relentless sun hammering down. You're sweating through your linen tunic, and let's be real, you probably won't survive this without some shade or a clever trick. That's where tonight's story begins, with the birth of the hand fan, humanity's first portable air conditioner born around 3000 BC to keep pharaohs cool and powerful. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through the desert outskirts of Memphis, Egypt's bustling capital around 3000 BC. The air shimmers, mirages dancing on the horizon like teasing spirits. Your sandals sink into the hot sand, each step kicking up fine dust that sticks to your skin. You're not alone. Merchants haul baskets of dates, priests mutter prayers to Ra, and laborers drag limestone blocks toward some half-built pyramid. Everyone's wilting under the sun's glare. But the pharaoh? Oh, he's got a secret weapon. You squint toward the palace, a sprawling complex of mud brick and palm-lined courtyards. There, in the shade of a towering obelisk, you spot a servant gently waving a large, frond-like object over a seated figure draped in gold. That's no ordinary stick. It's the earliest hand fan, woven from palm leaves, its broad surface stirring the stagnant air. Historians peg this moment, around 3000 BC, as when hand fans first appeared in Egypt, crafted to battle the desert's brutal heat. You edge closer, curious. The fan's rhythmic swoosh is hypnotic, like waves lapping the Nile's banks. It's not just about comfort, though. There's something regal in the motion. The pharaoh, lounging under a canopy, barely acknowledges the servant, but that fan? It's a lifeline. Without it, even a god-king might pass out in this furnace. You notice the fan's design. Long, supple palm leaves lashed to a sturdy wooden handle, probably acacia or sycamore. It's simple but effective, cutting through the heat like a knife. A quirky tidbit, some early fans were made with lotus leaves, which Egyptians believed held sacred cooling powers, as if a goddess herself exhaled through them. You smirk. Imagine pitching that to a modern HVAC company. Lotus-powered AC, anyone? You wander the palace grounds, dodging a stray goose waddling past. The fan's origin story isn't just about staying cool, it's tied to survival. Egypt's climate was no joke. Temperatures could hit 40 degrees Celsius, and humidity near the Nile made it feel like a steam bath. Historians still argue whether fans were first a practical tool or a status symbol. But you're betting on necessity. Imagine being a pharaoh, draped in heavy jewelry, trying to hold court while your kohl eyeliner melts down your face. No wonder they demanded something to stir the air. You pause by a market stall where a vendor hawks reed mats and pottery. Nearby, a scribe etches hieroglyphics onto papyrus, maybe noting the pharaoh's latest decree. You wonder if he's jealous of that fan-wielding servant who at least gets a breeze while working. The fan's magic lies in its simplicity. You watch the servant's steady rhythm, each wave pushing air across the pharaoh's face. It's not just physics, it's a small rebellion against nature's tyranny. You try fanning yourself with a stray palm leaf you snatch from the ground, but it's clumsy, and a passing guard gives you a side eye. Clearly, you're no professional. Still, you can't help but admire the ingenuity. The fan's not just a tool, it's a spark of human defiance, a way to say, "Son, you don't own me." You chuckle. Modern fans owe their existence to these leafy prototypes, though I bet this servant would kill for a Dyson. As you linger, the palace's golden glow fades into dusk, and the fan's soft whoosh lulls you toward the next chapter of its story.
You're still in the heart of Memphis, the palace humming with life around you. The sun's dipping lower, casting long shadows across the courtyard, but the heat clings like a stubborn guest. You weave through a crowd of servants scurrying with trays of figs and barley beer, their linen kilts swishing. Your eyes lock onto a group huddled in a shaded corner, their hands busy with something delicate. They're crafting hand fans, the very ones you saw cooling the pharaoh earlier. You crouch closer, the scent of dried palm and wood shavings tickling your nose. These aren't just random leaves slapped together. There's skill here, a craft born from necessity and honed in the desert's unforgiving kiln. The servants work with quiet focus, their fingers deftly weaving palm leaves into tight, fan-shaped panels. You watch one woman, her brow furrowed, split a palm frond with a small bronze knife, her movements precise as a surgeon's. She layers the strips, binding them to a carved wooden handle with strips of papyrus cord. The result is sturdy yet light, built to withstand hours of waving without falling apart. You're impressed. Modern DIY enthusiasts could learn a thing or two from her. A mainstream fact: these early fans, dated to around 3000 BC, were often made from palm leaves or reeds, materials abundant along the Nile. They were cheap, renewable, and perfect for moving air and a climate that could cook you alive. You lean in, noticing the care in their work. Each fan is slightly different, some wider, some longer, depending on who it's for. A quirky tidbit catches your ear from a nearby servant's mutter. Some fans were decorated with crushed beetle shells for a shimmering effect, a flex of craftsmanship reserved for high-ranking nobles. You grin. Imagine the pharaoh's face if his fan sparkled like a disco ball. The servants don't chat much, but you sense pride in their work. These fans aren't just tools, they're tickets to the pharaoh's good graces. You picture a servant nervously presenting their creation, hoping it passes muster. One wrong weave, and they might be sent to scrub the crocodile pens. No pressure, right? The palace buzzes with activity, but you stay focused on the fan makers. A young boy, maybe 10, sweeps up stray leaves, his eyes darting to the older workers. He's learning, you realize, probably dreaming of crafting a fan for the pharaoh himself one day. You wonder what it's like to grow up in this heat, where a single palm leaf could mean the difference between comfort and misery. Historians still argue whether fan making was a specialized trade or a common skill passed down in families, but watching these hands move, you're betting on expertise. The precision feels like an art form, not something you pick up casually, like learning to whistle. You shift your weight, your sandals crunching on the stone floor. The air's still heavy, but a faint breeze from a nearby servant's fan brushes your cheek, and you sigh in relief. It's no electric fan, but it works. You imagine the pharaoh, lounging on his throne, feeling that same fleeting coolness. The fans are practical, sure, but they're also a performance. Each wave is a silent declaration of loyalty, a servant's way of saying, "I've got you, Divine One." You chuckle. Modern office workers might relate, fanning their boss with flattery instead of palm leaves. As you watch the servants stack their finished fans, their edges catching the fading sunlight, you sense something bigger. These creations aren't just for cooling, they're about to become something far grander in the pharaoh's world.
You're still lingering in the Memphis palace, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and warm stone. The sun's nearly set, but the heat lingers like an unwanted jest, pressing against your skin. You wander deeper into the throne room, where the pharaoh sits, his golden headdress glinting under flickering torchlight. Around him, servants move like shadows, their hand fans swaying in perfect rhythm. You notice something new. These fans aren't just tools anymore. They're props in a grand performance, symbols of the pharaoh's divine power. Each sweep of a palm leaf fan feels like a ritual, as if the air itself bows to his will. You're starting to see why these things are more than just a way to beat the heat. The pharaoh's throne is elevated, carved with falcons and lotus flowers, and you can't help but stare. His fan-bearer, a wiry man with a focused gaze, stands close, wielding a fan larger than the ones you saw in the courtyard. It's not just palm leaves. This one's edged with ostrich feathers, their tips dyed a deep indigo. The feathers catch the light, making each wave look like a ripple of night sky. A mainstream fact, in ancient Egypt around 3000 BC, fans became markers of status, often reserved for royalty or high priests. Only the elite got the fancy ones, while commoners made do with basic palm weaves. You smirk. Sounds like the ancient equivalent of flexing a designer handbag. You shift closer, dodging a priest sprinkling incense. The fan's motion is hypnotic, almost ceremonial. It's not just about cooling the pharaoh, it's about showing everyone he's untouchable, a living god who commands even the air. You imagine trying to sneak a fan like that for yourself. Good luck getting past the guards with their khopesh blades gleaming. A quirky tidbit, some fans were inscribed with tiny hieroglyphs, prayers to cool the pharaoh's spirit in the afterlife. You chuckle. Imagine an AC unit etched with "Rest in Breeze." The fan-bearer's arms never falter, though you bet he's dreaming of a break. His role is sacred, a position of honor, but you can't help wondering if he's silently cursing the desert sun. You glance around, noticing how the court reacts. Nobles watch the fan-bearer with a mix of envy and awe, their own smaller fans clutched tightly. The pharaoh barely moves, his eyes half closed, but you sense he's aware of every gesture. The fan's swoosh is a constant, like a heartbeat in the room. Historians still argue whether fans symbolize divine authority first or evolved into it later, but you're leaning toward the former. The way everyone stares, it's clear this isn't just about comfort, it's a power move. You picture the pharaoh demanding a fan during a diplomatic meeting, forcing a rival king to sweat while he stays cool. Classic. You ease back, your own skin prickling in the heat. The fan's role as a status symbol feels so deliberate, so calculated. It's not just a tool, it's a crown you can wave. You imagine modern politicians trying this. Picture a senator with a custom fan, smirking as they fan away while others wilt. The throne room hums with quiet whispers, and you catch a glimpse of a fan-bearer trainee practicing in the corner, his movements clumsy. He's got a long way to go before he's trusted with the pharaoh's breeze. As the torches dim and the fan's steady rhythm lulls the court, you feel the story shifting, pulling you toward the fan's journey beyond these walls.
You're stepping away from the palace now, the Memphis skyline fading as you follow the Nile's shimmering ribbon. The air is still heavy, like a damp cloak, but the river's edge offers a faint breeze that teases your skin. You're tracing the hand fan's journey as it leaves Egypt, carried by merchants and traders across dusty routes to distant lands. The palm leaf fans you saw waving over the pharaoh are no longer just a local trick. They're about to become a global sensation, spreading to Asia and Europe through ancient trade networks. You squint across the water, imagining boats laden with goods, their sails catching the wind as they carry Egypt's cooling secret to new horizons. You pause at a bustling river dock, where workers load reed baskets with grain, linen, and, yes, those familiar palm fans. A trader, his face weathered like old leather, haggles with a foreign merchant draped in strange, colorful robes. You catch the glint of a fan tucked into the merchant's belt, its feathers ruffling as he gestures wildly. A mainstream fact, by around 2000 BC, hand fans had spread through trade routes like the Red Sea and Mediterranean, reaching places like Mesopotamia, China, and eventually Greece. They weren't just practical, they were exotic status symbols, proof you'd tapped into Egypt's mystique. You grin. Imagine bragging about your imported fan at a Mesopotamian dinner party. You trail the trader as he boards a creaking wooden boat, its deck piled with goods. The fan's journey feels alive, like a spark jumping from one culture to another. In China, you picture artisans swapping palm for bamboo,
crafting delicate fans that whisper with each wave. In Greece, you imagine philosophers fanning themselves while debating the meaning of life, probably complaining about the heat. A quirky tidbit: some early Chinese fans were made with silk stretched over frames, so light they'd float if you dropped them. You chuckle. Modern influencers would lose their minds over a limited edition silk fan drop. The trader's boat rocks gently, and you lean against a crate, watching the Nile's current carry it downstream. The spread wasn't just about trade, it was about ideas. You picture a Mesopotamian noble sweating through a banquet, seeing an Egyptian fan and thinking, "I need that." Cultures borrowed and tweaked, making fans their own. Historians still argue whether Egypt's fans directly inspired Asia's folding fans or if those evolved independently. But you're betting on influence. The palm leaf design was too clever not to copy. You wander along the dock, dodging a fisherman hauling a net of wriggling perch. The air smells of mud and salt, and you feel the weight of centuries in each step. These fans, born in Egypt's heat, are now crossing borders, carried by hands that will never see the Nile. You linger, watching the boat vanish into the haze. The fan's journey feels like a quiet conquest, a small invention reshaping how people live. You imagine a Chinese empress, centuries later, delicately fanning herself, unaware her silk fan owes its existence to those Egyptian servants weaving palm leaves. Or a Greek poet scribbling verses under a fan's breeze, never knowing its Egyptian roots. You smirk. Modern fans, from electric ones to those flimsy festival freebies, all trace back to this river, this moment. As the dock quiets and the stars begin to prick the sky, you feel the fan's story pulling you toward the craft behind its creation, back in Egypt's dusty workshops.
You're back in Memphis, the city's pulse thrumming as you slip into a narrow alley behind the palace. The air smells of baked earth and resin, and the distant clink of tools echoes from a cluster of mud brick workshops. You're here to uncover the artistry behind those hand fans, the ones you saw servants weaving for the pharaoh and traders carrying across the Nile. These aren't just slapped-together palm leaves, they're the work of skilled hands, turning raw desert materials into tools of comfort and prestige. You duck under a low awning, the shade a small mercy, and step into a workshop where the real magic happens. Inside, the air is thick with dust motes dancing in slants of sunlight. You see artisans hunched over low tables, their fingers moving like dancers in a trance. One man, his hands calloused, splits palm fronds with a flint blade, each cut precise as a scribe's hieroglyph. Another woman binds feathers, ostriches you think, to a polished cedar handle, her movements swift yet careful. The fans take shape before your eyes, each one a balance of form and function. A mainstream fact, ancient Egyptian fan making relied on local materials like palm, papyrus, and feathers, crafted with techniques refined over generations by 3000 BC. You marvel at the economy of it, nature's leftovers turned into royal relief. You lean closer, catching the faint scent of sap from a freshly carved handle. The artisans don't look up, but you sense their pride. Each fan is a small masterpiece, designed to last through hours of waving in the desert heat. A quirky tidbit, some craftsmen soaked palm leaves in Nile water mixed with natron salt to make them more pliable, a trick that doubled as a preservative. You chuckle. Imagine pitching that at a modern craft fair. Nile-soaked fans, eco-friendly and pharaoh-approved. The workshop hums with quiet focus, broken only by the soft scrape of tools and the occasional curse when a feather snaps. You're tempted to try weaving one yourself, but the glares from the artisans suggest you'd better not. The process is mesmerizing. You watch a young apprentice, barely a teenager, struggle to align feathers evenly, his brow furrowed like he's solving a puzzle. An older worker nudges him, pointing out a loose knot with a grunt. It's clear this isn't just a job, it's a legacy. Historians still argue whether fan making was a formal guild craft or a skill shared across households, but you're betting on specialization.
The precision here feels too polished for amateurs, like the difference between a home-cooked meal and a chef's tasting menu. You wander to a corner where finished fans are stacked, their edges catching the light like delicate wings. Some are plain, for everyday use, others shimmer with inlaid shells or dyed feathers, destined for the pharaoh's court. You step outside, the heat slamming you like a wall. The fans you saw in the talus, the ones spreading across trade routes, all started here, in places like this. You picture the artisan's hand steady and sure, shaping tools that would outlive them by centuries. It's humbling knowing these fans cooled kings and inspired cultures far beyond Egypt's sands. You smirk. Modern air conditioners owe a debt to these sweaty workshops, though you bet these craftsmen would laugh at your battery-powered desk fan. As the workshop's rhythm fades behind you, the story's pulling you toward the fan's lasting legacy, whispering through time like a gentle breeze.
You're standing at the edge of Memphis, the city's noise softening as the desert stretches before you. The sun hangs low, painting the dunes gold, and you feel the weight of time in the warm air brushing your skin. You're no longer just chasing the hand fan's origin, you're tracing its legacy, how it rippled from Egypt's scorching sands to shape cultures across centuries. Those palm leaf fans, born to cool pharaohs, have left echoes in palaces, markets, and homes far beyond the Nile. You take a slow breath, imagining their journey, each wave of a fan carrying a piece of this ancient ingenuity into the future. You picture the fans you saw in the palace, their rhythmic swoosh, a quiet rebellion against the heat. They didn't just stay in Egypt. As trade routes carried them to Asia, Europe, and beyond, they morphed. Palm leaves gave way to silk in China, feathers to painted paper in Japan. A mainstream fact, by 1000 BC, hand fans were a staple in cultures from Greece to India, each region adapting Egypt's design to its own materials and aesthetics. You smile, thinking of a Japanese geisha delicately fanning herself, unaware her silk fan owes its roots to those Memphis artisans sweating over palm fronds. It's like tracing your favorite app back to some clunky 90s software. Humble beginnings, global impact. You wander toward a quiet market stall, its vendor fanning himself with a simple reed fan, probably a knockoff of the palace originals. The motion's familiar, almost universal, and you realize that's the fan's true power. It's not just a tool, it's a shared language. A quirky tidbit, in ancient India, fans were sometimes woven with peacock feathers, believed to ward off evil spirits while keeping you cool. You chuckle. Imagine marketing that today. Demon-proof your summer. The vendor catches your eye, offering a fan for a few copper rings, but you wave him off, too caught up in the bigger picture. The fan's legacy isn't just in its materials, it's in how it shaped moments, from royal courts to village markets. You pause, the sand warm under your sandals. Historians still argue whether the fan's spread was more driven by trade or cultural imitation, but you're leaning toward a mix of both. Merchants carried the physical fans, sure, but the idea of fanning, defying the heat with the flick of the wrist, spread like gossip. You imagine a Roman matron, centuries later, fanning herself at a banquet, or a medieval European lady hiding a blush behind a feathered fan, each one tied back to Egypt's desert workshops. You smirk. Modern electric fans humming in every office are just souped-up versions of that same defiance. Remember that lotus leaf fan you heard about? The one supposedly blessed by a goddess? Its spirit lives on every time someone flips on a ceiling fan. You turn back toward the city, the stars now pricking the sky. The hand fan's legacy feels like a breeze that never stops, touching lives across time. From pharaohs to poets, it's been there, stirring the air, marking status, sparking creativity. You picture yourself back home, maybe grabbing a cheap plastic fan at a summer festival, and you realize it's part of this story too. The Nile's glow fades as you linger.
The fans whisper, pulling you into a softer, slower moment where the desert's heat feels distant and the world grows calm.
You're back in the quiet of your own space now. The desert's heat's a distant memory. The story of the hand fan lingers, its gentle rhythm like a lullaby in your mind. Picture yourself holding one of those ancient palm fans, its edges soft, its breeze a whisper of Egypt's sands. The pharaohs are gone, their palaces dust. But the fan's simple genius still hums in the air. Every time you feel a breeze, it's a nod to those artisans who wove comfort from leaves. Let the day slip away like sand through your fingers, and imagine a cool night settling over the Nile, stars above, the world at rest. Drift now, carried by that ancient breeze, into a soft and dream-filled sleep.